A fierce battle rages as Sol reflects on the legends of heroes who saved the world, wondering if those famous figures ever felt fear before rising to greatness. His party, he notes, is remembered as the legend of the miracle children of Ross Village. The team pushes through a violent magical surge, calling out that their break has ended. Everyone braces to give the fight everything they have. 5 years have passed since the party Black Tiger was formed. Their quest for rank promotion leads them deep into the great forest of Amelia's northern frontier, where a demonic basilisk awaits. Confidence runs high as they declare this battle their crowning achievement. Mark and Alan charge forward while Sol is told to step aside. Since the enemy appears isolated, Rin quietly confirms she has scouting covered. Sol takes charge, directing Rin to use taunt to draw the beast's attention while the others prepare their assault. Rin readies her blade, standing firm and resolute. As she prepares to face the basilisk head, on she braces herself, accepting the challenge and daring the monster to strike. The basilisk lands a heavier blow than expected, forcing Julia to rush in with healing magic to stabilize her. Julia's spell restores Rin fully, and the party regains its rhythm, ready to continue the fight. Sensing the basilisk preparing a dangerous skill called Impact Break, the group shifts strategy to disrupt it, rather than let it unleash the attack. Alan unleashes a barrage of elemental and magic bullets, refusing to let the opening slip away. Debate breaks out over which element deals the most damage, with wind magic favored while Mark charges up his own explosive attack. Mark moves to finish the fight immediately, though Rin calls out a warning to stay cautious. His explosive fist barrage slams into the creature, sending shockwaves through the battlefield as the others watch the impact unfold. A blinding strike follows, and Sol tenses, sensing the decisive blow has landed. The basilisk falls, and the party celebrates their hard-won victory. Though Sol warns the fight is far from truly over, the girls tease Sol for looking the most exhausted despite his words, laughing as they declare the Black Tiger's winning streak is only beginning. Alan and Mark share a quiet moment, agreeing it is time to finally tell Sol something important. Word of their basilisk conquest spreads through Garlage, the fortified city where crowds marvel at the Black Tiger's flawless victory. Introductions close the chapter. Julia Miller, the Saint of Healing; Rin Faulkner, the Iron Wall; Alan Lewis, the Grand Magus; and Mark Ross, the Supreme Fist. News of the basilisk's defeat spreads across town, and other adventurers admit that reaching a rank now seems like a mere formality for the group, once known simply as village children. Two men chuckle over gossip about the party's wealth, remarking that the miracle children apparently owned a mansion in Garlage before even turning 20. Back among his companions, Sol receives praise for the mission's success, and the materials pulled from the basilisk prove valuable enough to fetch a high price. Alan teases him with light flicks to the forehead, joking that these leadership duties are exactly the kind of thing he is happy to leave. To Sol elsewhere, strangers question Sol's worth, gossiping that he only reached a rank by writing on the achievements of his childhood friends, dismissing him as nothing more than an errand boy. Overhearing this, Rin grows irritated at how thoroughly people underestimate the value of a leader's role, noting how the rumors keep growing more exaggerated. Julia rushes to reassure Sol, insisting that his guidance is the reason the team fights without losing anyone, urging him not to let the gossip get to him. The party laughs together afterward, reflecting on how far they've come since turning down the Royal Army's offer and choosing instead to keep growing as independent adventurers for 2 more years. Sitting down to a warm meal, the group marvels at their circumstances, joking that this scene could belong in a storybook's happy ending. Mark disagrees, declaring he is nowhere near satisfied, already dreaming of the respect and recognition still ahead of them. He pushes the idea further, proposing they use their reputation to join the Royal Army, seeing it as the greatest leap in status a group from their humble village could imagine. Alan interrupts with his own ambition, favoring the prestigious 100-handed giant clan instead, prompting Rin's tired sigh at the same old argument resurfacing. Rin admits she'd simply be content continuing their monster hunts together, earning trust among the people around them for years to come. Julia agrees, adding they don't need to be greedy so soon after their promotion, content with steady, honest progress. The conversation shifts toward marriage, with Julia mentioning a nobleman's interest and hinting she might consider retiring. Leaving Rin visibly troubled by where the discussion is heading, Sol steps in calmly, asking everyone to stop arguing and listen for a moment. He explains that staying independent under the guild allows them freedom to explore opportunities abroad, something a rigid clan or army structure would restrict. Mark, surprised that Sol rarely voices an opinion, listens as Sol insists their goal was never about material comfort or luxury. Sol reminds them of the promise they made 5 years ago, declaring that their strength belongs to no one but themselves and that it is far too soon to submit to anyone's control. He vows to lead them toward that same dream together, but Mark suddenly cuts him off, coldly stating that Sol is being fired from Black Tiger effective immediately, revealing doubts from powerful clans and the army itself about his worth leaving. Sol, stunned as Rin and Julia struggle to intervene. Mark presses further, coldly asking if this outcome now counts as Sol's version of a happy ending, leaving the room heavy with silence. Facing him directly, Mark asks if Sol truly wants to die out there alone, insisting there is no shame in accepting this. Sol quietly admits he understands. Rin lunges forward, pleading for Sol to wait, but he simply states that he will leave, walking out as the others watch in stunned silence. The chapter closes on the title card, "The Boy Who Ruled the Monsters," crediting Solrock and Rin Faulkner, as the story appears to reach its conclusion. Credits roll, thanking the townsfolk, the Adventurers Guild, and various supporting organizations, closing with a simple farewell to the reader. The words "the end" appear over a city skyline, though a quiet caption hints that the story isn't truly finished yet. Sol stands amid falling petals holding a bouquet of roses, declaring that this moment marks only the beginning of his true journey. Time shifts forward. A woman stirs awake, murmuring softly as morning light spills into the room. She startles upright, demanding to know what is happening, while another figure looks on from nearby, confused. She asks if the Black Tiger has truly disbanded. While outside, a familiar figure enjoys quiet time with flowers, insisting he is simply content with his own happy ending. She questions what exactly he means by that, clearly puzzled by his calm attitude toward everything that happened. Elsewhere, Rin admits that if Sol hadn't been there for her, she might have broken down long ago, thanking him for helping her keep moving forward despite everything. The others tease the two for being oblivious, watching their exchange with knowing smiles and playful judgment. Julia interrupts the moment, prompting Rin to scold her for the sudden intrusion, though the atmosphere stays lighthearted. Later, Julia approaches Sol directly, sensing he is hiding something, and asking him to be honest with her about it. She reveals that ever since Black Tiger disbanded, there is a question weighing on her that she needs him to answer. Holding out her weapons, she asks if their powers themselves were somehow tied to him all along. The weight of the question settling in the room. He recalls the day 5 years ago when none of them had shown any sign of special ability, back when they were simply ordinary children. The girls press further, pointing out how he always seemed to know their skill cooldowns and how their perfectly timed combos felt far too precise to be coincidence. Memories of their childhood surface, the two of them chasing the same dream together, running to catch up as one voice calls out for the other to wait. Mark grumbles at being teased, while the group laughs about how New Year's Day is drawing close. The day they're all set to turn 12. They speak eagerly of the future, imagining themselves as adventurers conquering every dungeon and becoming a legendary party. But the moment of truth crushes those hopes, as none of them awaken any talent at all, leaving despair behind the realization that only 1 in 1,000 children ever gains such power. Alone afterwards, Sol notices something strange stirring within himself. A glowing board appears before him, and he instinctively understands how to control it. The interface reveals stat distribution, HP and MP buffs, skill granting, and detailed equipment monitoring, hinting at abilities far beyond ordinary combat talent. He assigns roles to his friends in secret. Rin becomes the tank, Julia the healer, and the other two turn into damage dealers, while he takes the position of support, completing the party he once dreamed of as a child. And so, without anyone realizing the truth, the Black Tiger Party comes into being, each member celebrating their new status as adventurers. Sol explains that everything traces back to his skill, the player, the true source behind their extraordinary teamwork, then quietly asks if she believes him. He admits they were nothing more than ordinary villagers, and Rin replies that she now understands why they'd unknowingly relied on that hidden power for so long. She reassures him that the Miracle Children legend belongs to him alone, but he insists their own growth through battle experience is something they truly earn themselves. Watching Mark and Alan boast to the crowd, Julia mutters about how blind men can be, unaware after 5 years of the truth behind their strength, while Rin comments that the two most arrogant among them are the ones who should feel ashamed. Sol reflects that he never found the courage to confess his secret, having planned to reveal it once they reached A rank. Fate moved faster than he expected, and he ended up expelled before he ever got the chance. Even so, he admits he still wants to chase their shared dream, sensing that Mark and Alan have simply grown more realistic after 2 hard years of facing the world's harshness. and he has no intention of taking back the skills or stats he once granted them. He declares his true ambition aloud to build the strongest party in the world with his ultimate support skill and free every territory ruled by monsters. Turning to Rin and Julia, he asks them to join him, explaining he needs companions he can trust completely for what comes next. Julia admits she understands where Mark and Alan were coming from, confessing she has secretly doubted herself for a long time, and reveals that she and Rin have decided to step away from adventuring altogether. Rin recalls how, even as she grew strong enough to face fiercer enemies, she couldn't shake the sense that she never truly belonged. Always feeling deep down like nothing more than a villager pretending to be something greater, she confesses her deepest fear was endangering him because of her own failures. Admitting his skill was the very thing that lifted ordinary villagers to the level of rank A adventurers. Julia adds that if his power were used on those with natural or genius talent, it could elevate them to superhuman heights, whether human, demi-human, or beast folk, and she has no doubt he'll one day find companions truly worthy of standing beside him. As his hand meets hers, an unspoken understanding passes between them. Black Tiger's story might end here, but something new is quietly beginning. Rin urges him never to abandon that dream, and he agrees without hesitation. With renewed resolve, he declares there is no time to waste. And just like that, the true journey of Soul, the player, finally begins. Soul shows Rin around his workspace, pointing out the strategy plans laid out for nearby dungeons and the scouting list of potential adventurers. She marvels at how thorough and dedicated he has become. Julia and Rin prepare to leave for the day, telling him to rest well before they head out. As they go, Julia lingers for a quiet moment, calling his name softly before saying goodbye, while Soul wonders quietly what else he might try next if his plans succeed. Elsewhere, Julia declares she hasn't given up on her dream of becoming Saul's wife, prompting Rin to sigh at her friend's persistence. New faces begin crossing his path as old companions drift further away, memories of a childhood promise lingering quietly in his thoughts. A new chapter opens in the story of the hero destined to save the world, though true happiness still lies beyond his grasp. With fresh resolve, he sets out once again toward the dream he refuses to let go. Saul walked through the guild's grand hallway, announcing to himself that his departure from Black Tiger was now official. He was completely on his own, and his mind drifted back to the days when he still belonged to the guild. Steve Naiman, the general manager of the Garlage branch, intercepted him before he could leave. He questioned why Soul was skipping his own celebration and asked where he intended to go. Naiman explained that the guild valued its relationship with Black Tiger and pressed him about the sudden formalities surrounding his exit. Nearby guild members overheard the conversation and reacted with shock, realizing Soul had actually left the party. Naiman scolded him, insisting the situation was no laughing matter. After covering the costs of his celebration, Soul apologized weakly while being dragged off by two guards who wanted to know what was really happening with Black Tiger. Naiman remarked that Soul seemed almost too composed for someone whose party was falling apart. He revealed that the legendary A-rank party was disbanding over differences in direction, leading Saul into the back office to discuss it further. Naiman reminded him that a general manager's position wasn't something to underestimate. He asked whether Saul had heard what the other four members, the former villagers, were planning to do next. Naiman described his own talent, passed down through generations of guild knowledge, allowing him to identify the names of almost anyone's abilities, no matter how rare. He admitted he hadn't believed his eyes when he first saw Soul's talent. Its name alone, player, stood far beyond anything he had ever encountered. Naiman explained that as general manager, he couldn't ignore what he'd found. The so-called least remarkable member of the Miracle Children actually held one of the rarest talents in existence. Soul sighed, recalling how he'd chosen to keep his talent hidden to preserve peace among his old companions. Naiman agreed that this discretion was exactly why their friendship carried real value. Naiman reflected that once trust between teammates breaks, no one can risk their life for another again. He confirmed that Black Tiger now stood on the verge of collapse, prompting the two guards to thank him for the update. Soul gazed toward the horizon, and Naiman asked whether he intended to keep chasing his dream and search for new companions. He admitted it wasn't his place to judge, since Soul never seemed like someone content to sit still. Soul confessed he felt lost, unsure how people would view him now. Naiman reasoned that most would assume he'd merely ridden on Black Tiger's reputation since his true talent had stayed secret from every high-ranking adventurer. Naiman offered to pull strings and connect him with skilled adventurers, calling it simply part of his job. Soul thanked him, and Naiman began weighing his options for who might suit him. Naiman warned him to stay cautious on his way home that night, teasing him about someone waiting nearby. He admitted he'd been looking forward to a moment like this for years, ever since he'd earned his position. Alone that evening, Sol realized that with the guild's backing, he could finally build a party strong enough to rival his former team. He considered that freeing a monster-controlled territory might work toward his ambition of conquering a dungeon, though he questioned whether it would truly be enough. A sudden vision struck him, showing figures collapsing under an overwhelming force, weapons flashing through the chaos. Sol staggered back, sweat forming on his face as he whispered that it was impossible. Silhouettes of monstrous beings loomed against a crimson moon, and a voice warned that human strength alone could never stand against them, not without power drawn from myths and legends themselves. Sol decided it was finally time to try the ability he had kept hidden for so long. A strange summoning screen appeared before him, marked for 1. Time use only. He admitted to himself that he had avoided this power ever since gaining his player talent, afraid it might interfere with his childhood friend's dreams. Missing the right moment, he had left it untouched until now. Sol reasoned that since his ability leaned entirely toward support, he lacked real combat strength, and this might be the compensation for that weakness. Still, something about the situation nagged at him. Brushing his hesitation aside, he told himself he'd need this power eventually, and chose to commit to using it. A burst of light tore through the room the moment he touched the summoning circle. Energy surged around him, pulling his body into its glow. Fragments of memory flashed through his mind. Lessons about ancient magic that most instructors at the Royal Academy had dismissed as fantasy. He recognized the pattern forming as a multi-dimensional layered magic circle, the kind used for teleportation, and could hardly believe it actually existed. Suddenly surrounded by stars and drifting planets, Sol struggled to accept that outer space stretched out around him. 5 cards materialized in the light, resembling tarot cards, each one calling out its name directly into his mind. The first 3 revealed themselves as the fallen divine beast, the captive elven queen, and the sealed evil dragon 2. More followed, the void demon king and the cursed hero, each radiating power that left him speechless. Every option felt equally dangerous, yet equally tempting, and he knew he had no time to hesitate over which one was truly right. With no way to judge correctly, he reached out and chose the symbol of strength, the dragon. A violent explosion of light consumed the space around him as the choice locked into place. Chains wrapped around a massive draconic figure, binding it as the connection between summoner and beast took form. The dragon's roar shook his very body, and instinct screamed at him to escape, even as he registered the impossible truth staring back at him, a real dragon. The creature's voice cut through the chaos, quietly asking whether he was destined to become its master. It confessed that it had been a long time since it last spoke with anyone, catching itself and asking if that tone sounded better. Hesitant and oddly gentle, it asked whether he would become its companion. It swore that if he truly wished to become its master, it would dedicate every last drop of its power to him until the day it perished. And Sol found himself charmed by how sweet its voice sounded. Sensing his silence, the dragon's tone trembled, assuming he didn't want to be its master after all. Bracing for rejection, it asked instead for the mercy of ending its life right there. The dragon begged for mercy, its enormous voice trembling with fear as chains rattled around it. Sol stood stunned, insisting he was only human, with no way to defeat a creature like this. The beast explained it had fallen in battle and accepted that consequence, yet pleaded to be killed rather than endure further suffering, since it could no longer move, see, or feel anything. For 1,000 years it had been trapped there, unable to sleep, go mad, or die. Sol asked if it had lost to someone and been chained up for a millennium as punishment. The dragon admitted it could no longer bear the torture, and as the chains around it began to disappear, it cried out, confused and overwhelmed by what felt like true loneliness tearing its mind apart. The dragon called it a windfall, pleading again for Sol not to leave without ending its suffering. Sol hesitated, recognizing that this moment actually worked in his favor, while the creature insisted it couldn't bear another 1,000 years now that hope had been dangled in front of it. Raising his hand, Sol addressed the black dragon directly, asking if it would swear to obey his commands and become his loyal servant. He declared his dream of conquering every dungeon in the world and introduced himself as Sol Rock. The dragon swore upon its name that it would obey every command without exception, vowing never to break that oath even at the cost of its own life. It revealed itself as Lunvempt Noctfilia, the All-Dragon, and asked Sol to speak its true name, Luna, to bind their souls together and seal the contract. Sol called out the full name, commanding it to become his loyal servant, and the dragon accepted without hesitation. A massive surge of light erupted as the pact completed, and the dragon offered its eternal gratitude to the mortal who had freed it. Soul reached forward into the glow, surprised to feel actual warmth radiating from it. He woke abruptly, staring up at an unfamiliar chandelier, disoriented by what he had just experienced. Sitting up on a couch surrounded by scattered books, he wondered aloud whether the entire encounter had only been a dream. A soft voice startled him from close by, and he turned to find something completely unexpected beside him. Recognizing the sleek black form nestled near him, he asked if this was truly the same dragon from his vision. A young woman with dragon-like features opened her eyes and asked softly if her lord was finally awake, her tail curling gently as she settled beside him. One towering, plated worm arrived to head the realm, dreaded as the wicked worm. In pride, it formally defied the deities openly, soul to collapse in one burst of sacred radiance. Currently revived in one frail body, the worm assumed the shape of one maiden, stating to possess soul one portion of her actual might. The youthful youth wondered if this maiden was really the identical dreaded beast of myth. Despite her looks, the reality turned certain. She nestled near him on the sofa, wanting heat and ease, later being chilled for so many. Despite his uncertainty, he led her to relax, uncertain of how to respond to the dragon's fresh shape. He touched out, softly stroking her locks, preferring quiet over the doubts that occupied his thoughts. Abruptly, one sharp sound broke in the instant, and she jumped to attack one trespasser lacking doubt. Though surprised, she was unhurt and swiftly recovered her calm. Reports of the Black Tiger's collapse started circulating between fighters, reducing who could yet endanger him. He understood ghetto-raised fighters probably viewed him as exposed currently, believing they could rob from him readily. Their timing felt overly exact. Doubt formed that somebody from the association had revealed details regarding him. Although skilled, he accepted the assailant's forces and ability could defeat him if found unready. The maiden observed the mystic shield had probably freed them, previously lacking it. They'd be lost by currently. She announced her allegiance, presenting this instant as evidence of her dedication and willingness to aid him completely. Employing his gamer talent, he inspected her attributes, one immense collection of forces and numerous available abilities. He was shocked to discover such enormous might yet qualified as her starting rank. For her, defending the one who saved her was not one obligation but one source of honor. Ahead they could proceed. One band abruptly cried into the chamber, taking them entirely away. Watch. Soul was surprised by the sudden encounter, his expression fixed in surprise as the invaders advanced in. Puzzled, he wondered how they arrived so abruptly, while she quietly evaluated the circumstances in his embrace. To his amazement, she had employed one shape of transportation mystic formerly believed legendary in the current era. Elsewhere, one aggressive band raised weapons around the structure with obvious purpose to assault, ridiculing Soul as the liability of the Black Tiger prepared to attack. Encircled by foes, Soul hovered aloft, thinking openly how his circumstances had become so grave. He understood their actual aim was his existence, and flight looked nearly hopeless beneath the present warning instead than alarm. He used to use the circumstances as one opportunity to measure Luna's power directly. With fire circling, Luna released her might, her shape emitting one immense arrival. In one immediate, the foes were hurled upward, helpless ahead her released force. Luna's might threw one of the assailants slamming to the earth, crying in agony as he dropped. This type of assault wasn't fresh. Soul had dealt with dangers ahead, often managed subtly by companions. Currently, nevertheless, Luna had defeated several foes with frightening effortlessness, reducing them into shattered bodies upon impact. Her power resulted from being one mystical being, her energy reserve, unlike everything witnessed between people. Soul understood Luna displayed no pity. To her, removing dangers immediately was the gentlest choice available. Luna brought several cloaked youngsters, inquiring what should be decided with the prisoners who had displayed no murderous purpose. Soul recognized them as remaining, probably controlled tools, and planned them for interrogation. Their history exposed one cruel reality: waifs from ghettos pursuing hopes outside their grasp, sold to be abandoned. He related, noting that lacking might, he might have suffered their destiny. Yet, he issued his warning: obvious comply or expression execution. Although if he didn't really plan to slay them. Soul questioned the youngsters again, uncertain whether they were deceiving him or simply too frightened to talk under pressure, stating they were informed little, causing Soul to relax and alter his method. They exposed their crew connection and their boss's name, who was previously lost. With identity suffered, Soul decided to bring them beneath his leadership and bring them power to battle. He ordered them with forming one mighty team, powerful sufficient to shape and join the slum's divided groups. One of the youngsters revealed their complete role in the assault, consumed by remorse and regret. Soul, with one unsettling piece, cautioned them not to talk of what they had witnessed or discovered. As he triggered his talent, one wave of might rushed into the youth, changing their attributes entirely. With Luna's assistance, Soul granted her restorative mystic, making she could endure later fights as backup. But as the mystic assumed effect, her expression started to sting strangely, throwing her into one alarm. To her surprise, Eliza's marked expression recovered entirely, putting her shocked and silent. Sol gave them duties, asking they reach the association by midday the following morning, with no additional arrangements. The youngsters knelt, taking his commands with fresh regard and loyalty. Sol and Luna left in one burst of mystic. Eliza observed them disappear, wonder filling her gaze. Elsewhere, Sol said his talent gamer, which led him to easily bring partners' abilities and attributes. Sol said that Luna had no weaknesses on ability assignment, allowing him to grant her nearly everything. Though pleased, Luna became somewhat embarrassed, realizing although her power wasn't sufficient for the lowest dungeons. While making meals, Sol acknowledged that strengthening Luna was necessary to achieving his personal objectives. Luna, nevertheless, revealed it didn't matter who had freed her, she would have followed whoever who released her. She subtly said she had no honor or personal value made as one follower. Sol one desire to obey. Sol pressed Luna to keep their relationship proper, and both accepted as many as their objectives matched. To restore her complete might, Luna exposed she needed to reclaim her missing worm sight and antlers. They decided to start with one local labyrinth, the initial move toward recovering her actual power. That bedtime, Luna nestled up near Sol and mattress, promising to obey his orders lacking doubt. Nevertheless, the quiet instant was shattered when one fresh, strange being landed onto Sol's torso high slumber. Sol woke up in mattress with one mysterious gravity pushing on him. One of the beast partners had rested on above of him calmly whole bedtime. Her peace manner conflicted with the uncomfortable circumstances, but she looked unbothered. Luna subtly shared her heat and satisfaction from resting near him. Surprised, Sol jumped up, trying to clarify the confusion. Later changing, Sol going out soon to the Adventurers Association in Galedge, putting aside the uncomfortable dawn. Sol come at the association and was welcomed by Fiona, one widely called clerk. While presenting Luna as one fresh recruit, Fiona joked him playfully, saying he was the sole youth who'd ignored her appeal. Afterward, one association official wondered Luna's arrival, mistaking her as one servant or partner puppet, because to her looks, Sol strongly supported her, calling Luna as his skilled and reliable partner. Watching from one afar, Fiona laughed, saying that what attracts notice isn't merely looks or species, but certainty. Despite being one Therian, Luna's role grade showed as blank, confusing although the guild's talent scanner. Sol acknowledged his absence of spiritual belief, but considered if Luna's requirements suggested her might resulted from something outside sacred favor. The association official guessed she forced be one portion of one band, being one embodiment of the wicked worm. Nakfiria surprised but not consumed. Sol denied being upset. Lacking notice, Luna gestured above, making one fixture to fall as somebody above cried in fear. Luna's magic had raised the youth into the sky, shocking him as Sol quietly said it was part of one aerial movement method. From above, the association recruit chuckled uneasily. Sol remembered his personal shock, the initial moment he was transported. While the companions watched Luna with growing interest, they considered the spell's promise, likening it to destructive tactical mystic formerly connected to one ruined town. In the conclusion, despite doubts, Luna's arrival was approved. Luna seriously shared her allegiance, saying she'd not move opposing Sol's orders and requested to be condemned Sol if she ever failed. Sol comforted her, admitting their connection was yet fresh and complete of mysteries. Startled, Luna wondered if he really thought she'd deceive regarding her identity, despite the conditions of their initial encounter. Puzzled, Sol lightly requested if actual identities were that important. Luna's response was immediate and intense, consumed by the naivety of his naivety. She cried out in amazement, yelling that Sol had spoken her actual identity lacking, recognizing its holy importance. Sol, shaken aback, regretted, explaining he believed it was merely one given identity and used it lightly. Consumed by feeling, Luna shook and started to weep, unable to bear the confusion. Realizing the gravity of his error, Sol bowed himself, presenting one earnest apology for his naivety. Looking from throughout the chamber, the association official pressed Sol to bring task like one youth. Currently aware of the meaning, Sol felt remorse for entangling himself. Believing Sol's decision and promising to back up her with his power, boldly Sol announced the identity of their fresh guild liberators, representing their aim of liberating the beast-ruled lands. Luna displayed no doubt, although mighty monsters like the basilisk were witnessed as small dangers in her sight. Gazing upward, Steve reflected on ancient magical times, wondering whether humanity was finally recovering its lost power and glory. Sol reflected on the chance of joining Luna with additional monsters from that mysterious realm, envisioning their power together. Steve, shocked by the thought, momentarily imagined Sol guiding one crowd of mystical women, like one daycare keeper. Luna quietly approved the task, though Fiona failed to understand the complete scale of the plan. Association reception abruptly announced fresh guests known people called Rian and Julia had come. One confusion formed from Sol's wording regarding encounter Luna previous bedtime. Julia and Rian were shocked to find Luna so nearby to Sol, worried later the previous bedtime. They had looked for him, Sol to discover him with one unknown fresh maiden. Misunderstandings grew as Fiona keenly watched, excited by the strain and mocking Sol regarding the circumstances. Steve moved in, telling all regarding correct enrollment and practice for the fresh fighters. Fortunately, Julia and Renan swiftly calmed, taking Luna's arrival with the requirement that somebody move as her guardian. Reen abruptly announced she would also stay with Sol, shocking all in the chamber. She explained that while she couldn't accompany him on missions, she'd bring tasks for managing whole domestic chores. They were made silent. Julia, embarrassed, wondered Reen's honesty and resolve. Realizing Luna's frightening arrival, Reen convinced herself she had to obtain her place quickly. Instead of refusing her proposal, Sol thankfully approved, admitting he failed with housework and Luna's care. Sol was excited at the thought of staying with Reen, but companions wondered his blindness toward two attractive women. Luna acknowledged her emotions weren't fully unchanged, struggling to conceal the quiet joy she felt. Reen grinned kindly, knowing she couldn't match to Luna, yet pleased to become somebody useful to Sol. That honesty touched Luna, who quietly accepted the offer and assumed Ren's possession. Recognizing her weaknesses beyond combat, Luna readily approved Ren's household talents. With solemn certainty, Luna announced she would perform her obligation as Sol's bedtime partner merely as she did, the bedtime ahead. All stiffened. Reen and Julia looked silently while Luna remained oblivious of the meaning. Sol yelled in alarm, rejecting any indecent meaning, his tone ringing throughout the town. Although quiet on the outside, fate had begun to move under the peace. Elsewhere, hidden people schemed, their arrival suggesting at later challenges, Sol would certainly expression. A solitary fighter waited within the darkness, hearing that Sol's identity had surfaced yet again. At the rear gate of Gallage, one gathering assembled, whispering regarding one strange visitor. Appearing from the darkness, one person dressed in complete plate attracted whole sight to him. Called as Hecatonchair, he waited as the fearsome chief of the Black Tiger Guild, the guild's greatest mighty power elsewhere. Several fighters praised their fine clothes and upper-grade possessions. With money currently in possession, they started building one existence different from their ghetto-raised history. Sol said that with sufficient power, one adventurer could gain boundless money and rise to fresh ranks. Despite having no finished missions, the several were told that looks solely could bring confidence. Eliza asked Sol's presence for later shopping, wanting to prevent doubt when using costly items. Juan Maiden pressed him to remember his poor origins and not depart from his initial aims. Noting on her remarks, Sol wondered whether he had actually moved overly distant, overly swiftly. Sol reflected on how encounter the Worm Maiden had subtly changed his outlook. While companions considered grave issues, the maiden happily asked one generous aiding of beef soup, oblivious of the strain. Latter one short silence, the band accepted to join her, thankful for her honesty and appeal. Reddening, she requested if their following stop was the actual reason of their trip. Sol affirmed they were going to the arms store to obtain essential adventuring equipment. Rumbling echoed through the road, sharp sufficient to alarm nearby walkers. Pushing open the door, Sol moved inside and found one known scene, limbs tight and sight broad. The smith Gawain jumped up with one thunderous laughter. Control busy aside the counter, he acknowledged to taking one break from grave forging. With one peace grin, Sol mentioned the basilisk resources were previously earned for crafting. Gawain proudly guaranteed above-grade equipment, keen to forge something remarkable. Doubt followed swiftly. He barked in amazement at the thought of outfitting complete novices. Concerns grew when he discovered the equipment asked was for advanced mystic use. Own contract proposal shifted the voice priority privileges in beast material processing backed by actual benefits. Understanding struck deeply. Boundless entry to superior resources made Gawain broad-eyed and silent. Approval to operate inside restricted zones was lightly given, including complete delivery of 5th-grade resources inside 1 month. The seas with strong complete distribution privileges were kept for the association. One few times ago, defeating one basilisk was planned one formally in 1 century feat. Sight narrowed. Doubt granted way to calculation. This wasn't merely regarding earning gold, it was one foothold into something bigger. Although the companions local, listening in grasped the gravity of what was offered, Gawain quietly weighed the proposal. If those remarks carried reality, although above-grade nations would compete for such might, instead of pushing more, he let out one breath, rubbed his scalp equipment for the Hydra hunt, resulted initial little would above that in importance. Arrangements were finalized swiftly. Hunting the ruler of band zone number 9 turned their official aim. This hidden being, restricted to its territory for unknown causes, was thought to be the reason the realm hadn't collapsed completely. The maiden lightly labeled the mighty Hydra as merely one multi-going snake, stunning all. Lacking doubt, she exposed her name, one actual worm, vastly superior to everything they imagined. Amazement lingered, though Sol subtly claimed she was genuine, merely in human shape. Gawain, hammer in possession, shrugged away the uncertainty. Crafting plate remained his sole concern, yet the thought of employing unprecedented resources had completely occupied his thoughts by then. Doubt lingered. Gawain issued it obvious he hadn't accepted the several newcomers as worthy yet. Instead of remarks, he issued one physical challenge, Gallage-style wrestling, demanding evidence of power. One of them quietly exposed she was one maiden, causing uncomfortable quiet and one apology. Despite the surprise, the contest continued, and pure resolve started to show. Looking them battle, Gawain remembered Sol's history and felt something move. Honor, hope. Maybe, although belief, recovery from practice made one of the boys visibly exhausted, but obvious progress was evident. Elsewhere, the women praised their sparkling, fresh equipment, excited by both its beauty and might. Amusement erupted out as they remembered the wild wrestling contest that had earned their equipment. Despite history struggles, the trio currently walked boldly toward the association with renewed unity. Their impressive looks turned heads. Observers mistook them for superior fighters at initial glance. Dawn resulted slow, and one sense of unease lingered between old friends. Despite the casual greetings, strain grew when Sol requested for one private word. His partners interrupted, confronting the men regarding the group's history collapse. Their quiet affirmed the reality: prior ambitions had collapsed when confidence had failed. Though conflicted, Sol given limited assistance. Expectations were low, but the offer was earnest. Wone's sneering remark mocked their costly equipment, rejecting their work as child's game. Strain grew when Eliza was abruptly cornered, her face clouded with uncertainty and shame. Lacking notice, one inappropriate advance surprised the band, sparking immediate outrage. Reflection followed. Assumptions regarding power were wondered, and motivations behind arrogance started to unravel aside the scenes. One quiet relationship implied at harder coercion. One beyond team had been watching whole along. Alan wondered Sol's fresh partners, ridiculing their value and rejecting them as mere youngsters. Lacking doubt, Sol announced Alan one enemy, affirming his personal path and his team's role. The encounter turned physical as one partner lunged forward, strain flaring in one immediate. Surprise rippled through the chamber. Those misjudged partners currently emitted equal mystical duress. Despite attempts to reconnect, Sol's icy glare issued it obvious. Bridges had previously blazed. Surprise extended through the chamber as Sol's chill declaration disturbed all local. Ahead, the strain grew more. One heavily plated person moved forward to intervene. Presenting himself as Hans Occam, he come with one obvious reason: recruitment. One unknown youth introduced himself to Sol as one battle negotiator from the hundred-handed deities. Inside the association tavern, Sol replied with skepticism, pointing out the band was originally recruiting somebody else. Sol said Black Tiger operated as one unit. The past chief Marek had his personal ambitions. Marek had contacted the Crown military but was refused. Despite their positions as chiefs, Sol and his partner were blamed for not being able to control their personal team. Hans mocked the team, calling them mere youngsters, despite their reputation as Black Tiger fighters. Arn's unusual quiet indicated the plated youth was no normal guest. With one smooth voice, Hans extended his proposal, asking Rhine and Jury to accompany him for their valuable battle promise. He promised equal handling for them and guaranteed parity with their companions, hoping to gain their confidence. Despite the polite front, one mysterious and unsettling sky started to surround them. Sol gestured out the tactical choice issued by the recruiters. Rhine and Julia were chosen for their positions' flexibility and synergy. Their importance rested in uncommon battle positions like defenders and medics, making them highly wanted later. Despite the enticing proposal, he strongly said his absence of interest in joining their organization. He pressed them to tone their stance, causing lively but obvious refusal of the proposal, emphasizing the clan's immense shape and might. Although the royals couldn't ignore, Sol subtly dismissed the proposal, saying it had little to do with his hopes. Hans replied with one grin, amazed by Sol's grand ambitions and strong certainty. Despite the praise, another recruit wondered whether Sol really had the power to chase such hopes. Casting doubt, strain grew as Hans mocked the band, causing one unseen being to talk in defense of Sol's mysterious arrival emerged, and their uncertainty turned to alarm at the unknown power appearing. Luna, enraged, hurled one mystical assault at Hans, but his soul chuckled mockingly, unbothered by the warning. Hans remarked on Sol's peculiar presence, taunting him for having one Therian maiden by his beside, implying scandalous reports were actual. The companions wondered Sol's popularity, mocking him regarding his supposed appeal. Hans decided Sol must be one above-grade flirt, attributing his female partner's allegiance to seduction. Scorn persisted until Hans abruptly turned grave, suggesting direct negotiations with the women, putting them shocked. Hans pressed the women not to retire, insisting their power should aid the realm. He painted them as heroes, necessary people of hope in one realm threatened by monsters. With praise and coercion, he urged them to guide, but his intrusive conduct disturbed the maiden he addressed. Standing firm, her partner refused the proposal outright, denouncing his pride and calling all to leave. Hans cautioned them of the consequences, implying that declining him forced turn one mighty guild into their enemy. Sol quietly wondered Hans's veiled dangers, while the youth claimed his proposal was sole for the women's safety and obligation. With convincing style, Hans claimed fighters were strengthened by public and should move properly in exchange. He gestured out their costly, saying their money resulted from people's desperate desire to be protected. His tone grew with force as his rage surged. Enraged, Hans condemned the women as foolish, enraged by their refusal and driven by his twisted dreams. Hans charged them of escaping their obligation to mankind, then guaranteed to use them effectively for the larger benefit. In one solemn shift, he arrived plated and menacing, stating expertise in using women. One firm move halted his advance. Somebody interrupted, demanding he stop quickly and show restraint. Sol quietly said that his teammate was overly earnest to ignore such false accusations. Stephen, another association official, come and accepted the circumstances, defending the team's legitimacy and the merit aside their rewards. Hans berated Sol's attitude, stating it was disrespectful to use one seasoned negotiator so lightly. Frustrated by the imagined insult, Hans scoffed at the fall of the hundred-handed deity's standing. Sol quietly countered, saying no one in the band was value recruiting based on the details available. She implied that murderous Hans wouldn't, although feel improper later. The strain erupted as Hans assumed battle stance, frightening the association. Rhine's sudden boldness startled those around her, putting although her partners uncertain of her purpose. The association official reflected on Sol's history struggles, recognizing that power was needed both to chase hopes and defend comrades. Hans knelt, admitting Sol had the qualities worthy of guiding one fresh liberation association. But that instant passed swiftly as Hans attracted his cannon, emanating one murderous presence with his guards. As his obedient worm, her power would fill the gap he lacked solely. Hans hurled one mighty assault, slashing through the sky with pure power and precision. In response, Luna attacked again with intense mystic, driving Hans into the ground and rocking the whole chamber. Staggered, Hans understood he had been struck by one old transportation magic. His senses rattled and puzzled, all observed in wonder as Hans was repeatedly transported and slammed, suffering immense mystical duress. Defenseless and shattered, Hans cried for help. Enraged, lunged at Sol with brute power, desperate to restore control of the battle. Sol countered with one exact throw, throwing Hans slamming backward with destructive impact. Observers gasped as the depart exposed one lethal execution method sole achievable at Sol's rank. Despite Hans's ability, Sol had transported alongside him, embedding one axe into his torso-high sky. As Hans collapsed in defeat, the chamber accepted Sol's immense victory 1-1, decisive attack. Later the combat, Sol's control over Luna's worm might attracted admiration from his partners. With quiet honor, Sol exposed the identity of his might gamer, one unique talent allowing him to leadership and backup flawlessly. He comforted all that Hans was yet living, having Sol been pushed to the edge, not killed, as the band prepared to discuss forming their fresh association. In one quieter instant, one partner wondered whether Sol's deeds were genuine or one move. Aaron sat in amazement, consumed by the events unfolding ahead him. Sol remained silent, his face unreadable. Fiona arrived and softly embraced Aaron. The sight brought again one quiet memories, stirring something inside him. Sol arrived ahead, one band of fighters, drawing their startled glances. Despite that, Sol was yet dismissed as somebody who relied on borrowed power. One fox pretending to be one tiger. One towering person defied the speaker, interrogation his taunt directed at her master. She requested whether one fox employing one tiger's force was really weak. Her gaze narrowed as she urged more was might from the deities, not actual power. With one peace face, the lady announced that might comes in many forms. Her remarks made Alan trembling. One partner rushed to steady him as the companions observed in quiet. Sol's gaze turned chilled. The quiet became heavier, unease circulating through the chamber. Elsewhere, bedtime dropped over the town of Garlage, blanketing it in peace. At Alan's home, one lady woke from mattress, feeling something had shifted. One sharp fall echoed through the chamber as the older lady yelled, silencing the youthful lady midstep. Sitting with tightened blows, Alan regretted his mistake. Terror entered into his tone as he remembered the terrible presence she emitted. He yelled in denial, declining to believe the one he abandoned had gained such frightening might in mere times. Despite his alarm, Fiona embraced him softly, promising to remain by his beside no matter what resulted following. Beneath the moonlit window, Fiona embraced Alan, whispering softly as he drifted in her embrace. The heat between them silenced whole fears. Elsewhere, Sol woke conscious, his companion lightly resting on his knees. Bursting into the chamber, Sol stiffened as he spotted the two in mattress. Alan jumped up in alarm. Fiona touched for one blanket, while companions yelled and gestured in amazement. With one strong tone, Luna stated the evident. Responses shifted from discomfort to complete shame. Sol lamented entering in unexpectedly. One map's light had guided him directly to Alan. Trying to recover, Sol wondered the circumstances. Alan stammered, found in uncomfortable timing. He remained peace, saying Alan's response didn't contest somebody as clever as he formerly thought. Luna, disturbed, covered her expression. Sol subtly watched, needing no more explanation. Sight narrowing, Alan's mask cracked. Rage surfaced, promising to slay Sol ahead the morning ended. Sol spoke subtly, piecing together the pieces of betrayal around Alan's treachery, though he wished it was one confusion. The scene unfolding affirmed his doubts. He wondered the nature of the women local, watchful as always, announced weak signs of concealed mystic emanating from one of them. Returning to the chamber, they faced Fiona, whose arrival triggered immediate strain. With one smirk, she joked Sol regarding his timing, while Alan became increasingly disturbed. Fiona leaned in with one lively voice, suggesting they ignore her deeds. Sol's face hardened, proving his doubt. Alan recoiled at the reference of loving bonds. His effort to protect her sounded false, exposing the reality. Sol quietly exposed the guild's surveillance operation that had been looking Black Tiger whole along. Alarm collection in as Alan attempted to deny Fiona's role. She remained sitting, unchanged, reducing away. Fiona claimed her emotions were singular, suggested Sol for him. Fiona exposed her actual aims. Alan's allegiance, though genuine, had merely been convenient. Lacking doubt, she attacked him throughout the expression. Rage flared, lacking restraint. Taunts erupted. Fiona yelled in anger, releasing all she'd carried in. Alan reeled again, consumed as the storm of remarks and blows persisted. Strikes hit deeply. Each taunt struck harder, ridiculing his honor and revealing his weakness. Luna wondered whether the physical contact ahead her was another shape of mating. Embarrassed responses followed. Logic breaking fast. Uncertainty grew. Sol attempted to explain, but Luna decided it must be unfit for study. During the disorder, Fiona released another wave of public lesson, completely overpowering Alan. Formerly above, she, currently determined, promised to learn with him. Fiona mocked her rival. Her certainty blazed, and her blows attacked actual. Wings extended, broad. Sol and Luna prepared to depart out. Fiona leaned in for one last, private farewell. One parting kiss drained mystic from Alan. Though weak, it was sufficient for her satisfaction. Transformation followed, her actual shape exposed. Succubus, might unreadable. Sol's scanner couldn't register her attributes. Luna hurled forward, lacking doubt, sight locked on the enemy. At last, an opportunity to demonstrate herself had arrived, and she would not waste it. Surprise overtook Alan's body, limbs tensed as something strange attacked him. Uncertainty occupied Fiona's gaze. Lacking notice, the terrain twisted. Buildings changed and hovered as one massive magic triggered beneath her control. Smiling fiercely, she mocked their pride. Scorn filled her voice as might flowed around her. Ahead departure. Sol raised one possession, stopping her aloft with one question. He requested quietly, did Fiona Bannister ever exist? Or had she stolen another's existence fully? With one grin, she remembered their suffered history. 2 years of memories poured out as if little had shifted. Luna said the risk plainly. Demons remove memories from those they consume, no sign survives. That believed attacked deeply. Sol's face stiffened. One sinister grin extended throughout one concealed expression. Soft tears escaped Fiona's sight. Something under the outside cracked. In one quiet forest, one tone echoed. One memories returned, one occupied with heat and hopes. Sol brushed away his injury, saying he couldn't afford to stop. Fiona, smiling softly, disagreed, but praised his spirit. One small bandage with one heart was put on his finger. Her quiet offer set above than remarks. Reddening, she whispered it was one private. Her face glowed with fondness and playfulness. Chilled whisper erupted the instant. Sol's voice turned serious as he summoned Luna. Lacking doubt, Luna replied to his leadership with deadly purpose. One massive claw crashed down, rocking the battlefield. Several people waited firm ahead its force. Luna yelled, calling the foe one fiend that devours people. Fury flowed in her tone. Sight widened as one destructive attack hit. The enemy reeled from the sheer power shards of power, erupted on impact. Two fresh partners come high combat, prepared to accompany the battle. The might of whole worms, absorbed and awakened, currently answered her orders. One youth leaned out of the window, surprised by one disturbance in the sky above the town. From one higher vantage source, the disorder turned clearer. Something massive was moving through the rooftops. Abruptly, dazzling lights erupted throughout the sky, their brightness suggesting mighty mystic at work. One towering beast, cloaked in power, conflicted with one person aloft in one fierce encounter. Two fighters arrived below, making to counter the immense power with pure mystical force. Hovering above the town, one antlered lady descended quickly, locking her gaze on one worm looming outside the trees. One wave of mystical power erupted as her might conflicted with the beast's enormous glowing eye. Another fighter emerged, emitting peace force as her magic erupted through the enemy's defense. She waited firm, ridiculing her foe's reliance on devoured mystic and calling her superiority. In response, the antlered lady winced as her final method was broken easily in exchange. One completely plated fighter released one storm of bright blasts, forcing the demon again in surprise. From above, one sharp ray of power attacked the ground, shattering the terrain in one strike. Despite the ruin, the lady rested injured yet living, holding to awareness with remaining power, puzzled by the thunderstrike's origin and her personal frailty. Abruptly, the observers understood something else. One mighty movement magic had consumed massive power. The demon prepared one broad area assault, causing alarm between local partners as the blast radius expanded. With one bright, confident grin, Luna comforted her partners of her power and resolve, putting him briefly shocked by her bright hope. Charging forward with renewed power, Luna hurled one counterattack, sharp through the enemy's defenses. Explosions rippled throughout the battlefield as the band understood the trap had triggered one chain response. The battlefield calmed as Luna's mystic defeated each sign of the incoming assault, astonishing all. Shocked by her power, the boy observed as Luna extended her embrace in triumph and joy. Lacking doubt, she leaped into his embrace, her joy spilling over in one tight embrace. Their sight met in quiet, one instant of mutual recognizing nearby between them. Carrying her boldly, he turned toward the beaten enemy, putting her silent in amazement. They observed as the escaping fiend failed to flight, found inside one mystical shield around them. Abruptly, mysterious lights flared above, causing Luna to raise her sight in caution. One massive plated being soared over the town, its arrival igniting alarm in the skies. While Sol hesitated, Luna recognized the bombardment and announced it one assault from one allied orbital cannon. The blast attacked its victim cleanly, engulfing the enemy in one searing explosion of sacred power. One orbital cannon fired from realm, unleashing one blinding attack upon the ground below seconds afterward. The cannon alone erupted high space. Sol and Luna captured the enemy lady, who exposed her link to one hidden temple sect. Despite victory, Luna sensed something lacking, subtly contemplating the actual nature of their combat. As Sol reflected on the might gap between them, Luna happily accepted his progress with one grin. Sol understood the enemy they had faced was distant, stronger than expected, barely manageable. Although beneath Luna's protection, the destructive mystic released earlier could have ruined whole armies if cast repeatedly. Luna quietly evaluated the outcome, calling it one successful demonstration of their might. But their prisoner refused cooperation, rejecting any purpose to reveal who she really followed. With steely determination, she announced her purpose to slay them both, lacking doubt. Sol said that Alan had been brought along for interrogation, but was ultimately merely one tool misused by their enemy. The beaten demon failed to understand how Sol had won so completely. He silenced her, saying her turn would come later. They managed additional issues. Luna asked approval to consume the prisoner, living in an attempt to gain her powers, recognizing the uncommon and powerful qualities the victim held. Weakly calling out, the fiend lady pleaded for assistance, her tone trembling as Sol waited in quiet, lacking showing sympathy. He wondered her logic, saying her agony shouldn't have led such betrayal. Frantically, she given to remove her demonic memories and stay Sol with her host's name. Sol coldly requested what meaning that would aid currently, her panic erupting as she pleaded not to vanish before seeing her king once more. He remembered Fiona's grin, believing she overly not wished for such one destiny. Local Luna devoured the survives carefully, savoring each bite beneath one silent sky. Despite the disturbing crunches, she remained in her actual shape, unbothered by Sol's discomfort. Reducing to Alan, Sol quietly prepared to question him, allowing no flight from reality. He requested if Alan's deeds were his personal or if he overly had been controlled. Alan's tone shook with amazement, accusing Sol of murderous Fiona, lacking doubt. Instead of wavering, Sol replied strongly, identifying the being as the fiend, not Fiona herself. Regardless of memories, he asserted that the being was no longer the identical individual. Enraged, Alan yelled again, declining to believe that Sol had the authority to determine that. Urgency poured out as Alan claimed the fiend with Fiona's memories was Fiona. In reality, Alan revealed he had loved Fiona deeply, ever since the instant he initially laid sight on her. He remembered how, although the guild's clerk noticed his fixation, identifying it as strange, moved by fixation, he labored endlessly, doing anything it assumed to remain by her beside. Anger rose as he charged Sol of overlooking Fiona's emotions and pursuing foolish dreams. Despite all, Alan acknowledged he hated Sol above than whoever. Alan remembered the instant Fiona requested him to slay Sol, believing her lacking doubt. Tears welled up as he begged to remain by her beside. Although if merely one portion, memories of her heat haunted him, convincing him that existence lacking her had no meaning. He informed Sol to conclusion it, or expression his revenge one morning. Ahead deciding, Sol wondered if whoever else had one possession in her deeds. Sol closed his sight as quiet dropped. The farewell had previously been decided. One lady raised her possession, fire igniting in ritual. The solemn move was not one of assault, but one last offer. Remembered the instant he was cast out sight looking, remark sharp, honor injured. He had witnessed it then. One short flicker of doubt on the leader's expression. Currently, doubts hung unspoken. Where had it whole moved improper? Woan fierce tore through the enemy's shape as she waited firm, shielding her partner lacking doubt. The dark essence recoiled, retreating upward through the canyon like one injured beast wanting flight. Elsewhere, one message flickered on one glowing screen, one watchful that someone's existence and connected attributes had vanished. Sol listened as the maidens said their suffered growth. Though formerly skeptical, she quietly evaluated the distant warning, deciding it posed no important risk to them currently. The dawn started with fresh intel. Sol prioritized the update, making for action lacking delay. Her bright hope eased the tension, suggesting day carried hope, merely like the previous. While discussing sealed demonic powers, her interest spiked. Sol's notice resulted quickly. Some troops remained overly unstable. Beneath the open sky, she abruptly collapsed, putting Sol in quiet uncertainty. From the earth, her vow emerged softly no matter the cost. She would perform his desire. As the dawn radiance erupted, the small being soared with power, oblivious of the dried blood yet on its mouth. Sol remained quiet, then granted one small nod. One short silence followed ahead. He approved the request with peace determination. Later, one bedtime of disorder, Princess Frederica arrives at the association to meet Sol, captivated by his recent deeds. Amazed by his power, the officials suggest giving him positions inside upper leadership. Word travels swiftly. Such upper-level posts are seldom given, particularly to past bee adventurers. Sitting upon her crown, Frederica delivers the proposal with elegance, adding gravity to the instant. Elsewhere, Sol's partners recall the previous night's events, yet broad-eyed from whole that transpired. Frederica's voice softens as she asks Sol to call her by identity, exposing one uncommon vulnerability aside her crown façade. She explains her trip to the town, first to seek ability for inheritance backup. Noting on her childhood, Frederica admits this encounter changed her views and felt fated. With red face, she bravely declares her desire to give the whole Emeria realm to him. Surprise ripples through the chamber. Her partners are shocked, while Sol remains subtly. When requested if she really suggested to proposal one country, Frederica confirms lacking doubt, yet affected by previous night's event. Remembering the tremendous strength Sol had demonstrated, with solemn certainty, she swears by her identity to devote her power and allegiance fully to Sol. Observers stiffen. Crown vows are binding. The air turns tight as moment feels stopped. Inside one morning, all owned to the second princess, is practically put in Sol's control. Sol discusses his aim, forming one really mighty team skilled of conquering any dungeon. He emphasizes the need for swift coordination, but also admits the guild's ability reserve is limited, hence the strange arrival of one crown. Frederica, despite being the third princess, is famous for gathering superior troops and earning crown approval, suggesting at one demonstration of power. Coincidentally, one fearsome enemy is because that bedtime, one ideal instant to showcase his might. As plans start, the band shares one radiance instant ahead the emanating combat. Abruptly, one towering person emerges in the bedtime sky, one embodiment of immense power and menace. Era and status disappear ahead, such pure might inspiring both terror and reverence. Although the princess is made silent, her earlier boldness subdued by the sheer magnitude of what she witnessed. One heavy quiet settles, contrasting the princess's usual brightness, with all identifying one fresh gravity in the sky. Presence radiates from Frederica as she reveals the gravity of her crown determination. Thankful for their backup, the band acknowledges how little they know regarding one another. and agrees to strengthen their connection. Sol proposes forming one team to bring on one dangerous mission in the ban zone, slaying the Hydra. Frederica misinterprets the proposal as one loving offer. The band is shocked by her excitement, while she curiously inquires regarding Sol's unique talent to enhance his partners, shares her admiration for one certain might, one she has many dreamed of possessing. The team enters ban zone number 9, facing hordes of ferocious monsters rallying beneath the dark sky. As combat begins, Sol reassures the princess while backup abilities are deployed. With increased vitality and power, the team swiftly suppresses enemy scouts, shocking although Frederica with the results. Despite warnings, the princess demands on employing one forward combat fighter role. With one swift leadership, Sol coordinates the team. Arms clash as they engage the enemy scalp-on. Frederica launches one mighty ranged magic. Her companions watch closely, believing Luna to finish the assault. The princess remains panting, having quickly adjusted to battle. Tears of joy fill her sight as she credits Sol's backup for her success and exact timing afterward. In the quiet woods, she begins one honest conversation, her emotions plainly weighing on her thoughts. Sol acknowledged that he had misjudged the team's flexibility. He elaborates on how his gamer talent can enhance whoever, managing several partners with tactical precision. One simple agreement with the Crown Watch allows Sol to receive backup. Frederica, dreaming bravely, imagines strengthening the whole Crown military to become the strongest power in mankind. Her lively certainty leaves Sol consumed, though plainly entertained by her constant excitement. Bravely claims that Sol's might previously surpasses the kingdom's force, calling it Sol natural to pursue one alliance. She expresses firm determination, saying that if Sol clears whole labyrinths, it would support giving him the crown alone. Companions agree joining Sol with the realm would ensure power opposing any later crisis. Earnestly, she begs for approval, presenting herself along with the country. Sol, overwhelmed, finally snapped, admitting it was simply too much trouble for him to manage. Her partner explains that nations witnessing Sol's might can Sol choose submission or hostility. They reflect on the unexpected scope of the combat. Sol's response was to defend Galuge, not expand conflict. Found a way watch. Sol admits he not expected talk of ruling one realm. He Sol wanted to pursue his dream. His direct wording causes uncertainty. Frederica, though irritated, knows his deeds were out of urgency. Doubt arises that the thunderous mystic was one assault from the Holy Temple, overly mighty to be coincidence. Doubts obey. Was this not one sanctioned combat? To prevent provoking spiritual nations, diplomacy must be managed carefully. The show of power was designed to gain over the princess by proving cooperation would help them. Sol, uninterested in conquest, proposes one quiet solution, sharing benefits with additional nations to prevent battle fully. Frederica finally realizes Sol's power is so enormous that his motives are difficult to understand. Noting on their mourning together, she realizes Sol cares regarding his dream and defending his partners. Little else. Despite not needing any country, Sol has the shape to leadership, although beast-ruled territories implies he force be intending to seize this ban zone. Embarrassed, Sol explains the area's tactical importance, trying to support himself lacking exposing overly much. Sol explains that if Sol liberators can enter the area easily, conflict would be avoided fully. To back up him, Frederica offers Ameria's acknowledgement of rule. They grasp one deal. Sol orders focus on dungeon conquest while the realm handles whole political burdens. Nevertheless, one looming warning survives: the Iscariot Empire force assault beneath Holy Temple shape. Despite the scope of negotiations, Frederica is excited by the hope of suffered territory and later cooperation. Frederica demands that Sol, accepted by her, should be called as ruler. Her advisors hesitate, notice that forming nearby bonds overly swiftly could draw sacred opposition and spark battle, likening Sol's arrival to the legendary resurgence of mystical prosperity. She confesses admiration for one fabled adventurer, exposing her childhood dream of forming somebody like them. Reinvigorated, Sol shifts focus, issuing fresh commands as they prepare to eliminate one looming warning. Local. Descending with composed certainty, the maiden released one bright cry of mystic that engulfed the area with one blinding burst. The being was sealed away, putting the local team broad-eyed and silent. Elsewhere, Sol had previously traced their movements employing the map, pinpointing dangers ahead, whoever reacted. His explanation, nevertheless, soared outside their recognizing, putting them puzzled. Merely then, as expected, one fresh arrival woke local authority on Sol's cue. One wave of mystic radiance enveloped the band, its force signaling something outside, one normal rank up. As the might flowed, one maiden shook, consumed by the power forcing its way through her body. Seconds afterward, whole several weighted transformed, emitting might from one intense and sudden growth. Elsewhere, several partners had collapsed from the surprise of the event, unable to bear the aftermath. While Sol analyzed the circumstances quietly, fresh complications emerged as unknown people arrived local. One unknown coffin emitted one intense mystical response, drawing immediate notice as dust swirled around it. Inside, rested one dormant fairy ruler, formerly one legendary beast, dreaded alongside the mightiest beings in history. Word extended through town of Seoul, formerly mocked as one liability, defeating one nine-going worm. He showed on horseback, welcomed by crowds who currently hailed him as one hero. The town celebrated his visitor with cheers and admiration from whole directions. Seoul waited near one noblewoman as the citizens assembled in one grand chamber. Between the shocked onlookers, one past partner understood. Seoul currently waited with the princess herself. In less than 1 week since putting Black Tiger, Seoul's feats had previously rewritten legends. At the association, he coordinated the delivery of Hydra resources, making for the following task. With one composed grin, Seoul stated one upcoming mission entangling the Elven Forest. His band considered tactical expansion and reorganizing activities to explore local territories. Elsewhere, temple chiefs inspected Seoul's rising shape as one warning to their doctrine and might. Seoul offered one strong plan to enter the enemy's lines and reveal plans through careful coercion. With fresh certainty, the association chief approved the task, prepared to move beneath Seoul's guidance. Their following stop was the Forest of the Elves, with plans for shape previously underway. One fresh team assembled, showcasing power and determination as they prepared for the trip. Crossing one bridge, the band affirmed the fabled forest being and advanced toward their aim. Near the border of two kingdoms, Seoul's band come at the region many associated with elven legends. Historical accounts describe the forest as formerly ruined in one battle, yet signs of its survival lingered. Dense mystical fog shrouded the land, called to disorient. Although those with keen senses. Despite the risk, the team fought through dangers, while companions managed base activities. At previous, elven scouts arrived, startled that people had touched their concealed sanctuary unaided. The band was guided to one old elven transportation site powered by mystical power lines summoned worm veins. With wonder, they listened as the elves said the transport mechanism connecting deep beneath the realm tree. One portal triggered ahead Seoul's sight, drawing his notice to the bright power forming ahead. One by one, the band soared through the sky, carried by the magic toward their stop. They come ahead one colossal realm tree sapling. Elven chiefs shared thanks to Seoul for aiding revive their king. Upon visitor at the elven capital, Seoul's band was kindly received with one lavish celebration. The celebration became animated with Seoul encircled by loving elven women in exposing clothing. Elsewhere, companions wondered the prince's response, uncertain whether he was embarrassed or indifferent to the scene. Privately, one noblewoman acknowledged aims to make Seoul her consort, despite his hidden conduct. Seoul's band was led into one grand chamber where the Elven Elder Council awaited their visitor. The chief Isrentia officially received them and spoke on name of the upper leaders. They given deep thanks for protecting the Elven King and freeing their citizens from Empire troops. The council also accepted Seoul's work in breaking part of the king's old spell. One unknown person, bright and graceful, arrived ahead, whole sitting upon the crown of control. During the encounter, the elves requested Seoul to share his orders. He announced his purpose to conquer each labyrinth on the continent with the strongest available team. Seoul openly requested for the Elven King to accompany his team. The elves considered how their many conflict with the Empire issued Seoul's visitor. Hold the above important. He had employed his abilities to partially dispel the king's spell, but observed that one harder cause remained unresolved. Seoul's partner announced that they had obtained complete details on the spell from one captured Empire superior, not from brainwashing. But because to one fresh convincing talent, the princess officially asked one pact between the elven species and the Liberator's team. In exchange, the sole thing the realm requested was for Seoul's given desire to be fulfilled. Elder affirmed they couldn't power the king's decision, but would regard his choice if he awoke. Seoul asked to discover elven mystic techniques, presenting to lift the king's spell entirely in exchange. The elves suffered their plans for battle opposing the Holy Temple. Believing Seoul's plan, the elder accepted to delay more talks until the king could determine himself. Council ceased interrogation, having complete belief in Seoul's might and aims. Elsewhere, the Elven King woke, identifying the identical mystic radiance that formerly freed her ahead. Seoul moved forward as the Elven Council assembled, drawing everyone's notice in quiet. With firm determination, the Elven Elder announced one formal alliance with both the Liberator's team and Amelia Realm. The following morning, Seoul's team assumed band zone number 4. Despite the disorder, Seoul remained confident, knowing Luna's power could counter, although concealed troops aside the enemy. Luna exposed their foes were connected to one old human species that formerly monopolized scientific technology. One fighter assumed battle stance, saying the actual issue was the 1,000 years of advancement the enemy had. He said spies had been placed around Black Tiger, proving the enemy had expected Luna's seizure. While Luna excelled in offense, she couldn't protect everywhere, putting the realm exposed to encirclement. Griffins and one territory leader released destructive blows, threatening irreversible damage to the realm. Sol understood this destruction was exactly the Holy Church's planned objective. He triggered one fresh ability that let him store vast resources immediately. Aware of the Holy Church's hostility, Sol expected one imminent assault. The companions listened seriously as Sol cautioned them. If they didn't move, numerous citizens would die in the emanating conflict. With risk looming, Sol said how local nations and rogue groups would exploit their frailty. Though uncertain how, he couldn't bear to watch his partners or the realm suffer. Sol called the band, highlighting the power they had gained by allying with the fairy tribe. He explained that while his main aim was dungeon conquest, he wouldn't turn his again on the realm. Raising his tone, Sol announced his purpose to discover one way to gain the battle lacking casualties. The team reacted with shock, uncertain how such one outcome was available. They understood that depending on Sol's guidance alone would not suffice. Everyone's effort was necessary. Band wondered whether they were previously at their limit. But Sol comforted them they weren't solely. He said that his unique might wasn't suggested for himself, but to back up companions. Though one single adventurer could accomplish little, united, they could achieve the hopeless thus. One team was necessary. They started discussing strategies, including smithing and resource intending, urging all to contribute their thoughts. One confident fresh person introduced herself Salmia, the finest smith of the fairy tribe. The Holy Temple had begun coordinating with the Empire, causing Sol to rely on Julia for diplomatic issues he couldn't bear. Although the villagers doubted their importance, one noble-raised maiden given to rally backup from her influential family. Julia conflicted, approved the mission though. Her engagement and missions were suggested to stay separate. Own band had previously begun organizing ghettos beneath unified control, proposing rapid action to stabilize society's underworld. With steady determination, Julia promised to contribute significantly. The realm prepared to select loyal and skilled fighters for the princess's watch. One maiden hesitated, facing one hidden arrival she dreaded yet knew she must confront. One mighty lady emerged, saying her sole focus was defeating dungeon monsters, not getting involved with the old regime. She demanded rapid power enhancement to perform Sol's ambitions, pledging herself entirely. Elsewhere, the maiden felt helpless, unable to move, yet longing to remain by Sol's beside. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she finally revealed her emotions. She could no longer conceal her suffering. Memories of the history surfaced times when she was nearly missing, but his backup had pulled her again. Sol touched out with one warm grin, inviting her to expression the later together. She mattered deeply to him. Consumed with feeling, she grinned again, taking his possession lacking doubt. The holy town waited, marking the following stop of their trip. In the holy cathedral's depths, one messenger come panting, delivering word to the anxious upper Pope Gregory. Ix alarm erupted as reports affirmed the release of the sealed fiend worm, Luvempt Noctfuria, and the collapse of key defenses. Shaken, the clergy understood these events matched exactly with old prophecy. Their prophecy identified Sol Warlock of Ross Village as the foretold enemy. Despite this, one noblewoman claimed that Sol's power had distance surpassed, although the Holy Church's might. Deep under the cathedral, one old vault was unsealed, releasing terrible plated beings of immense might. Shaken by their arrival, authorized the activation of banned arms, formerly sealed for centuries. Inside a vast hall, the priests prepared to punish the fake deity and his supporters. They thought mankind could always produce champions skilled at defeating deities and monsters alike. From the glowing chamber, one unknown fighter emerged silent, mighty, and unlike everything they had witnessed ahead.